In today's video, we put a retro jumper from every AFL team head to head in a tournament style bracket to see which team has the best retro Guernsey. So this is how the bracket will work. I've put all 18 teams into this bracket generator and it's randomly put the different teams against each other and we're just going to work our way through it. To make up the numbers, I've included the Tassie Devils and I've split Brisbane into the Bears and Fitzroy. Because of the number of teams, 8 teams will have to essentially qualify for the first round where the other teams start from. Starting off with Sydney and Essendon. The Swans in their 2010 pre-season Guernsey and the Bombers in their fat sash jumper. This one is pretty easy. The Swans jumper incorporates their South Melbourne history with their modern Sydney Swans identity, while the Bombers jumper is just a cheap way to avoid having an actual clash jumper. Sydney get the win here. Next we have a showdown between the Crows and the Power, Adelaide in their early 2000s away jumper and Port in their original home kit. This is a tough one. Two great Guernseys, but I think I'm going to go with Port, mainly because it was their home jumper for so long that it's just a bit more iconic than this Crows away jumper. Up next is the Bulldogs with the Robo Dog Guernsey and Collingwood in the swooping Magpie jumper. I really like both of these Guernseys, so this is another tough one. I'll have to go with Collingwood on this one. Our last qualifying game is North Melbourne and Freo. Freo obviously in the Anchor and North in their early 2000s away jumper. I've tried to avoid using jumpers that teams still wear regularly today, so that means no bounding groove for North. I don't mind this North jumper, but the Anchor is iconic for Freo, so this one goes to the Dockers. On to round 1 now, and we've got Brisbane in the Bears V jumper up against Sydney. Both are good jumpers, but something about the V in those colours just works for the Bears, so I'm going with Brisbane. Next up is GWS in the old blue Team GWS Guernsey up against Geelong in their 90s pre-season jumper. I might be in the minority here, but I'm going with the Cats on this one, probably just because the Team GWS jumper isn't in their colours, and so it doesn't immediately make me think of the Giants. Next we have Carlton in the sky blue clash jumper. I've gone for the 2011 version as it just looks a little better than the M&M's one from the 90s, up against Port. As much as I want to see the Blues bring back this clash jumper, I'm going with Port on this matchup. Again, that jumper is just more iconic. Up next is Melbourne in the Flaming Demon, up against West Coast in their early 2000s tri-panel jumper. Another tough choice here as the Flaming D is just a great looking jumper, but there's a lot of nostalgia with the Eagles tri-panel. I'm gonna have to go with Melbourne. Next we have Fitzroy in their iconic home jumper versus Collingwood. Again, two great jumpers, but I'm gonna go with the swooping Magpie. Our next matchup is the Suns in their wave jumper, still probably their best jumper design ever, up against Richmond in their 90s pre-season Guernsey. Yet another tough choice as I actually really like this Richmond kit, but I'm gonna have to go with the Suns on this one. Next we have Hawthorn in their 90s Hawks head jumper up against Freo. Two great jumpers once again, and another tough choice. Maybe it's my team bias here, but I've got to go with Freo. Our last matchup of round 1 sees the Saints in their candy stripe jumper versus Tassie in their foundation Guernsey. Call me crazy, but I'm going with the Saints on this one, only because I feel like this Tassie jumper belongs in the State of Origin section, not at AFL club level. Plus, I've come to like this Saints jumper a lot more after they wore it in 2024 than I did back in the 2000s. So the Saints win this one, and it's kind of crazy to think how many great Guernseys haven't made it past round 1. On to the second round, and we have Brisbane up against Geelong. This one's easy, the Bears get this one. I don't hate this Geelong jumper, but it's crazy that this made it to round 2 considering the great jumpers that missed out. Next we have Port up against Melbourne. Now we're back to the tough choices. This might be the most difficult matchup we've had yet. I'm going with Port, and I'm willing to admit that might be the wrong decision as the Flaming D might be the better jumper, but when I think of Port Adelaide, this is the Guernsey I think of. Next we have Collingwood up against Gold Coast. Probably an easy win for the Pies here. I really like the wave jumper, but it's not better than the swooping Magpie. Next we have Freo up against the Saints. Call me biased, but I'm going for Freo again. The Anchor is iconic, the candy stripes is the Saints' third best jumper. On to the prelims now, and our first matchup is Brisbane versus Port Adelaide. This might be ridiculous, but I'm going with Port again, only because it's a jumper that is unique to this team. Any team can wear a V jumper, but this Port Guernsey is the power. Next is Collingwood versus Freo. This is tough because as a Freo fan, this is the jumper I love the most, but putting my bias aside, the swooping Magpie is the better looking jumper. And the grand final sees Port up against Collingwood. How ironic that these two should be battling it out in a Guernsey comp. I love seeing an underdog win, but it's not to be this time for the power. The swooping Magpie is once again the better jumper, so Collingwood win out this time. Give this bracket a go for yourself and let me know in the comments which team wins for you.